Welcome to Rhyme and Reason, hosted by Dr. Barry. Today, Barry welcomes Circuit Court Judge Ari Porth. And now, here's Dr. Barry Ryman.
Hello, everybody. Happy Hump Day. It is Wednesday, September 28th. This is episode number 27 of the Rhyme and Reason podcast. Before we get into today's guest, I just want to spend a moment shooting out some prayers to the west coast of Florida, who are about to be impacted by a monster Category 4 hurricane. I have it on in the background. It looks to be coming ashore in the Fort Myers, Sanibel, Captiva, Port Charlotte, that whole area over there. We are very familiar with Category 4 and 5 storms here on the other coast of Florida. So I just want to put some prayers out for those people who are going to have a rough go over the next 5 to 10 hours. It's a pretty slow moving storm. It's moving at 10 miles an hour. So, not a fun time. Anyways, we have had a number of different guests on this show that have graced us with their presence, from athletes to musicians to entrepreneurs to people just blazing trails in the recovery community. And one of the reasons we wanted to start this Rhyme and Reason podcast is to kind of pinpoint some of what I would call the local superstars, the local celebrities, people who have been in the trenches for many years that have had a positive impact on the community here in South Florida. And our guest today, I don't think I could have a better example of somebody who has really made an impact the way that Judge Ari has. Judge Ari, we met many, many years ago. I think it was back in 2014 during a presentation I was giving at drug court. And he now presides as a circuit court judge in felony and mental health court in Broward County, Florida. He's also previously served as a member of the Florida State Representatives. I think I'm butchering this, but he will help me with that. And he's also a long supporter of drug court programs in our areas, as well as drug treatment centers. You know, one of my most favorite things about Judge Ari is, when you look at a judge and you refer to him as Your Honor, I think for many years with the stigma of addiction and mental health, there was a lot of people who didn't really believe that people could get better. And he is a judge that would choose treatment over incarceration. Judge Ari is a person that believes that, no matter how bad a person is, that person has the chance and can get better and rehabilitate. And for somebody who's been in my position that witnesses people getting better every day, it's really refreshing to come across people in the legal community that are feeling the same way. So without further ado, please help me welcome Judge Ari Porth.
Dr. Barry, so nice to be here with you. I'd like to reach out and give you a hug.
Oh, me too, man. I ran into you. Our kids were part of a Broadway.
SpongeBob,
yes, it was like this Broadway camp.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, I haven't heard the end of it since because we didn't realize how much both of my daughters were going to enjoy that camp. That was the first year they did that. All right. They have been doing this, nothing against this, but they've been doing this boring fashion camp, which is like they learn how to sew and make outfits. And prior to it, nothing wrong with that. It's 2 minutes from my house in Parkland. Right. It was, but prior to attending the Broadway camp, they really liked the fashion camp. It was called like Petite Designers.
Okay.
Now, they're avid cheerleaders. They're competitive all-star cheerleaders. So their entire year is just inundated with everything cheer. So we wanted them to do something different. So we thought the petite designers. So they did that camp for 2 years. Well, so this year we decided to switch it up, and they were going to do this Broadway camp for just one session. I think it was 3 weeks, and perform in the SpongeBob SquarePants, which your son was incredible, by the way. I didn't get a chance to see you after the show, but wow, what a character. Okay, we'll get into that.
He's very dramatic at home too.
I wonder where he gets that from. It could be Mr. Bowtie. I'm not sure. It could be from your wife, but we'll see. Anyways, so the following week after camp, I had a trip planned with them to take them to this place I was actually just telling you about off air, South Sea Island Resort in Captiva. And we go every year, just the three of us, Dad and his 2 daughters. And they wanted to skip the trip to go back to this camp for the next session. I think they were doing Frozen or something was going to be the next show. So, but we went, and it didn't make sense for me to take them away for that week and then put them for only 2 weeks out of a 3-week session. But they were obsessed with that camp. I don't know what they did there, what they fed them there. But it's really amazing to see like kids who, they don't know each other prior to coming in there. And in a few short weeks, I mean, my daughter, my oldest, who's 11, is still in group chats with everybody from that camp.
Yeah.
So how long has your son been doing that?
He's 12 now. He's been going since he was 6. And I think the best thing about that drama camp is they're just very loving and accepting for all sorts of kids. They give everybody a role. Everybody's welcome.
No, I mean, yes, they give everybody a role. And your son's role, how did he memorize? I mean, he was like the main guy.
Yeah. He practices a lot.
He was tremendous. So I see a future, and I don't know if he's going to follow in your footsteps and do the whole attorney judge thing, but if all else fails, I could see him on Broadway.
We'll see. Whatever he wants to do, as long as he's happy.
As long as he's happy. And do you have other kids, or do you just have a 12-year-old son?
Only child in this household.
Only child. So he's spoiled. He's spoiled. He has to be spoiled rotten. I mean, okay, let's talk about that for a second. Let us know what his life looks like as being the only child of Judge Bowtie.
Yeah, well, I would have liked another one just for his benefit to grow up with a sibling. I'm very close with my brothers, but he seems to like it okay. He has all of the attention in this household.
He does. Okay, and I have a sister. So growing up, I think we competed for attention, but she's 5 years older than me. Today we're best friends. Back then we're mortal enemies. My daughters are 28 months apart. And so, my 8-year-old does everything in her power to be just like her 11-year-old. And my 11-year-old is, in a place now where, she tolerates her. And then other times they're best friends, but the majority of the time it's just nonstop fighting. Right. So you have more peace in your life. I can guarantee that with one kid. Okay. All right. So let's get into this. I want to know a little bit about you. I have known you for the better part of about 8 years, but I don't know you. And we have listeners that'll be listening today while it's live. The majority of our people will be listening once this episode is uploaded to Spotify or Apple iTunes. But you've been a mainstay in this arena, and I've worked in the field of addiction treatment now for about 15 years. And your name constantly comes up. If anyone mentions the Broward County Courthouse, they're like, "Oh, do you know Judge Porth? Do you know Judge Porth? Oh, Judge Ari. Yes, I. Oh, the bow tie guy." Like, you've really made a name for yourself. Like, backstory a little bit, where you grew up. Is this something you always had your sights set on, or is this something you kind of figured out you wanted to do later in life? Tell me a little bit about where you come from and kind of what led you to where you're at today.
Sure. I was born in D.C. To a dad that was a military doc at Walter Reed. I came down to South Florida when he got out of the military. Oh, is there some background? I hear background.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was
No
trying to
problem.
share this episode live,
No
and I
problem.
messed up.
So when I moved from DC, I came down to South Florida in the mid 70s. I'm sharing my age. I just turned 52.
Looking great.
And, thanks. I appreciate it. You're not seeing the back of my head, which is mostly bald. And then when my folks split up, I moved up to Michigan, which is my mom's home. I went to college at Northeastern in Boston. I spent a year on Capitol Hill working for Senator Graham. And then I came back down to South Florida for law school. I went to work at the state attorney's office for a number of years. And I always really wanted to work in public service. That's why I started at the prosecutor's office. I spent 8 years in the state legislature, but 8 years for me was enough. I really didn't love partisan politics, but loved the work of public service and thought that that passion lent itself well to the bench. And that's why I opted to run for circuit court judge. I always loved the idea of drug court and helping, and mental health court and veterans court, and helping the most vulnerable. And I thought that I could do that in our treatment courts. So at the time when I got a seat on the bench, the chief judge was somebody that I knew well and thought that I would serve well in the treatment courts. And he allowed me to initially sit in drug court and mental health court. And I'm still sitting in mental health court today.
Gotcha. Where did you go to law school?
I went down here at Nova.
You went to Nova. So my brother-in-law, his name is Brian Pabian, and he is actually your age. Let me see. No, he's older. He's 53 now. All right. He went to Nova. My sister went to UM.
Okay.
So I come from a long line of attorneys and saw what they went through in law school and decided to make a U-turn and veer the other way. I heard about that torts class, and I even know the names, right? I mean,
Right.
I saw that. What was law school difficult for you? Is that kind of something you breezed through? Is this like when you were a kid? Did you, 8 years old? Did you know you wanted to be in this profession, or?
So I knew I wanted to be in public service from the time that I was in high school. I had a government class and an inspiring government teacher named Mr. Brinker, who had us either all write a paper or work on a campaign. And I worked for a young man in Beverly Hills, Michigan. Did you know there's a second Beverly Hills? So in a suburb of Detroit, there's Beverly Hills, Michigan. And I worked on a state house campaign that wasn't successful, but that young man went on to serve in their state legislature and is now the sheriff of the county where my mom lives, Mike Bouchard. So I got motivated by Sheriff Bouchard knocking on people's doors, hearing what their needs were, what they wanted to see out of their representative, and wanted to do that closer to home. And that's why I ultimately ran for the legislature here in Florida.
Gotcha. And just for our listeners' sake, who are not too familiar with the legal system, you've now moved to circuit court. What is circuit court? What is the differences between what you were doing before to what you're doing now?
So the whole time that I've been a judge, I've been in circuit court, at least in Florida, and you probably have listeners in other states, but in Florida we have county court, which handles criminal offenses, misdemeanors and traffic related, and cases that are under a certain dollar amount. Circuit court is where my drug court is. The felony cases, the more serious criminal cases, the cases dealing with family and child support issues, probate issues, felony domestic violence issues, civil matters that are large dollar amounts.
Okay, so has this been like a big change for you from what you've been doing, or is it all kind of similar to where you were at before? And are you enjoying it?
Frankly, I don't know why I didn't start on the bench. For me, those 8 years that I served in Tallahassee, although I made some wonderful friends, and I think I made an impact with the public policy that I passed while I was there, I feel that the bench has been a natural fit for me. I feel like I was made to be a treatment court judge. Every day, I'm able to have an immediate impact on the lives of others, people that are suffering from substance use issues and serious mental health issues. We're able to help them find homes. We're able to get them wraparound treatment services. Sometimes people are very, very sick and require hospitalization. We're able to provide peer support services. We're able to get people to be medication compliant, and people have black and white turnarounds. I mean, you see somebody one day and then you see them 2 months later, and it's like you're seeing a completely different person. So
Best feeling ever.
it's the best feeling ever. It's the best feeling ever. I've had some really great days in this court. Some really great days. I've presented some sobriety coins to people that were in drug court or mental health court. 5-year sobriety coins. Those are for me. Those are my best days ever.
Ray Rapaglia.
That was one of them. That was one
Yeah.
of them. And my friend and former client of our court, Casey, who gave me the honor of presenting her coin recently.
Oh, I mean, that's a win. You know, that is, and here you are, Your Honor, and you're at a 12-step meeting or at a and presenting a medallion to people you could have put away for a long time. And right. So, I mean, you have the compassion bone in your body. Okay. And not everybody has that. Not everybody possesses that internal structure of having compassion for others. Now, was there anything in your history, and I don't mean necessarily personally, but any loved ones, anyone close to you that has suffered or struggled with addiction that has maybe made you more compassionate and understanding?
I've had a number of friends that have suffered from issues with alcohol, but my father's mother had many years suffered from depression and was in and out of hospitals. That's something that I don't know that I've shared publicly before, but I don't think my family would have an issue with me sharing it now.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And the more people share openly, the less and less there becomes a stigma, right? And I think that everything okay over there?
Yeah, good. I just dropped the photo. Yeah.
Okay, as long as it wasn't your
I
coffee.
I was gonna echo those same sentiments about stigma, especially when celebrities speak up, like Lizzo or Wayne Brady or Dan Levy, who have publicly come out and talked about their anxiety or depression issues. When people in high profile positions like that talk about their own issues, then everyday Joes like you and me can reach out and ask for help and not feel that there's such a stigma surrounding it.
I mean, at the end of the day, everybody who is walking this earth, we are all humans. Okay. And humans have brains, right? Every human has a brain for the most part. And we all experience emotions. We all go through difficulties. We all suffer and go through trials and tribulations. We all have our own stuff. And I think that the old school train of thought was keep it to yourself, right? Don't bring shame upon the family. Boys don't cry. There's so many things that I think were ingrained into us as children from that old school mentality of everything is going to be okay. Just don't worry, brush it under the rug. Don't talk about it. Keep it within the family. And I think what we're finding today is that the more and more people speak, the more and more people talk about their struggles, the more and more people relate. And once you have people relating, the more and more people are willing to ask for help, that there is no shame in asking for help, that we all have something. Okay. I'm a doctor of psychology. I've seen a therapist multiple times. Okay. This is just, that's like saying a physician would never have to see another physician because they'll never get sick, right? There's no shame in seeking help. And so I'm a big believer. I have, in the 26 plus years that I've been in recovery and I've been clean, I have never, I take this back and I'll tell you a little bit of a funny story, but for the most part in my life, in my personal life, I've never been anonymous. However, you'd appreciate this. When I was doing my doctoral internship, I did it through the consortium at Nova, Southeastern University. And we had 4 sites. We had Henderson Behavioral Health. We had the Brown schools back then, which was where I was at, which was with juvenile sex offenders. We had Broward Sheriff's Office, or BSO, and there was one other site that's slipping my mind. So I don't know, once every month, all of the interns from the sites would go to one site to do rounds, right? So we, 1 month they would be at where I was, right? 1 month we would go to BSO. And so the month that we were going to BSO, we went to the Broward County Main Jail. Now, I didn't initially break my anonymity with the doctors that I was in the program with, in school. And we're walking around doing rounds at the Broward County Main Jail, and they have like those glass, it's not like they don't have bar, they have like glass, right? And we're walking through, and it's, I'm being, I'm almost a doctor at this point, and I'm walking and doing rounds in the jail, and all of a sudden you knocking on the window, Barry. And the people I'm with are looking at me. I'm like, and then I'm like, a former client, and then we go to the next pod, and it's, yo, B, hey, and again, oh my God, another client. Get to the third pod. Yo, Barry, long time no see, my man. How are you? And finally, they looked at me. I'm like, look, those are my people. Right? I had been in the program for so long, right? Not everybody who comes into the program actually stays clean. And what happens? We wind up in jail. So that was how my anonymity got broken on my doctoral internship. But, from that point on, I have not been anonymous, right? And there's a part of you that feels, when somebody first gets clean, we don't come into recovery because we were model citizens, right? And I truly believe there is a distinct difference between a recovering addict and a recovering alcoholic. I don't think they're different diseases, but I do think that there are 2 programs for a reason, right? When we look at AA versus NA, we're getting off on a little tangent, but I'm going to make a point. What a true alcoholic does to get their drug is they could walk into a grocery store, they can go to a restaurant, they can go to a gas station, they can go to the corner store, right? What does an addict do to get their drug that they can't buy off the shelves of Publix or in a liquor store, right? I think that there are 2 different personality types of the lengths people go to who are in actual active addiction versus active alcoholism. Okay. And so people who are coming into Narcotics Anonymous, a quote unquote addict, and not simply labeled an alcoholic. And again, I need to preface this by saying it is one disease. Okay. It truly is. And alcohol is probably the most devastating drug that's out there, but it's one disease. But in my opinion, 2 very different personality types. Okay. So what I did to get my crack cocaine was different from what Bob did to get his alcohol. And so, when we're looking at people who come into Narcotics Anonymous, a lot of us haven't lived as saints on our way into the doors, that we had to commit crimes to get what we needed, right? Anytime we picked up a substance, we were essentially committing a crime. Okay. If it wasn't from doctor shopping and having a prescription in our own name. So if we were copying something off the street. So a lot of the people that I associated with in early recovery were some of the most amazing people in the world, and still some of my best friends today, but they were not model citizens. And so my compassion has come from not only living that life for a number of years, but now being in recovery for so many years and trying to help as many people as I can. That's where my compassion comes from. And call me an optimist, but I truly believe that there is not one person that is incapable of help. And I think that, and I bring up this point because the way I have always viewed you is, and I could be wrong, but I think the majority of Judge Ari Porth almost feels the same way, that there are no lost causes, that with the right treatment, with the right help, people are capable of change. Yes, we get in our own ways, but people are capable of change. And if we help them to see how great they can be, they might just take the bait.
Yeah, I don't like to give up on anybody, Dr. Berry. That's very true. That's very true. And I do believe that people recover.
Now, there are times, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, where incarceration will save somebody's life. Okay. There are people who get to the point where they are so far gone that left to their own devices, they are going to die. And I have spoken with hundreds of people over the years that tell me that if they did not get sent to jail, they would be dead.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point for them. So I think from your perspective as a judge, you kind of have to weigh those options, right? And I can't speak for you, but maybe you can share a little bit about that there are some people that literally need to be locked up to save themselves.
Yeah, on a number of occasions when I feel that people have reached the very, very bottom and that they're going to be harmful to themselves, that their next drug is going to end up as an overdose. I've made the call to take them into custody, to hold them until a bed becomes available at a residential treatment program. And it's often been a changing point in their life. And sometimes you have to do that. You don't want to do that. You want to find the least restrictive place for them to receive therapeutic care. But sometimes you have to make that call when their life is at risk. And you take into account, hopefully they have some loved ones with them in court. You can hear from their family. Very often, unfortunately, the folks that I have in my court don't have supportive family with them. But if they do have supportive family with them, I hear from the folks that come with them to court, and sometimes the family will let me know that they've reached the bottom, and you need to take that sort of action. That's the only thing that can turn them around at this point.
Yeah, and you have probably single-handedly saved countless lives because of that. And I'm speaking from just years and years of witnessing people who have gone to jail that have come out and have reacclimated to society and have actually done well, right? But they would not have had a fighting chance if they did not get locked up. So I think that's an interesting point, because we started this conversation with, you're a proponent for treatment over incarceration, but there are cases where there has to be incarceration over treatment until they're ready for treatment, right? Which leads me to something else. We have a very unique thing here that is it's unique to Florida, and it's the Marchman Act. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the Marchman Act, and for the listeners who are not aware, do you want to talk a little bit about the Marchman Act and actually what it is?
Sure. It's like our Baker Act in Florida for those that are mentally ill that require hospitalization when they're at risk to themselves or others, but for excessive use of substances. I don't deal with it in the courtroom that I'm in. It's through our magistrates, in particular, Yves Lavantour. I've actually never handled a Marchman Act case, but you can go to the court and move for involuntary hospitalization of your loved one when they have just gotten to the point where you feel that they're out of control with their use of substances and that they're going to be a serious risk to themselves.
Yeah, I mean there is something to be said about being powerless. Okay, and yes, we're powerless over this storm I have on in the TV on the background. Okay, and we're powerless over a light turning red when we want it to be green, and we're powerless over a lot of things that happen in our lives every day. Okay, but in my estimation, some of the worst powerlessness is when one of our loved ones is on a crash course for death and you just feel like there's nothing you can do about it, that you've exhausted all options, you've tried everything. And so this Marchman Act, families can petition the courts. They have Marchman hearings every Tuesday in Broward County. And as opposed to what you called the Baker Act, which is for somebody who is potentially suicidal, homicidal due to mental illness, they can be involuntarily hospitalized for about 72 hours. That's the Baker Act. The Marchman Act differs. It's made specifically for people who abuse substances, and they could be mandated to treatment for 45 to 60 days. They're actually given a choice, from my understanding, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but they're served. And if they turn down treatment, they could be put in jail for 6 months. So, 90+% of the people who are served with Marchman orders will choose treatment over incarceration. And I'm a believer, and you hear it said a lot if you have experience in this industry. You hear it said, the person really has to want it to get it. I'm positive you've heard that before.
Sure.
You can't want it for them. I will tell you firsthand that on June 19th, 1996, when I got intervened on by my family and my psychologist and my sister, and I went into detox that night, on June 19th, 1996 at 1 in the afternoon, I was not thinking about staying clean for the rest of my life. And at 6 o'clock in the evening when the intervention was going on, I was not thinking about doing anything that was going to make my life better. But what I did do is, for the first time in a long time, I did not want to be a disappointment. And I said I would give this thing a shot. I did not want to stop getting high. That was not in my vocabulary. I didn't say, today's going to be a great day to get clean and keep this date for the rest of my life. Today's going to be the last day that I smoke any weed or any crack. Today's going to be the last day that I do any opiates. But I gave myself 90 days. And I said to myself, Judge Ari, I said, I'm going to give this thing 90 days. And on the 91st day, if I don't look better, if I don't feel better, if my relationships haven't improved, drugs, alcohol will always be there. We're not going to go through prohibition. That no matter how bad I want to pick up, no matter how bad I want to get high, that for 90 straight days, I'm going to do this treatment thing. I'm going to come out. I'm going to try these cult meetings that I thought were cults. And, I was going to shave my head and go door to door selling books or hand flowers out at the airport. There was a lot of stuff going through my head. But on the 91st day, I'd reevaluate. And on that day, if I didn't look better, I could always go back out. And so I went into recovery not wanting to go into recovery. Much like a Marchman Act, the hopes of a Marchman Act is putting somebody into a treatment center despite whether they want to be there or not. And the majority of them don't. But there have been more success stories of people who have been Marchman Acted that now have years and years of sobriety, right? Because the concept of getting clean and the concept of actually maintaining long-term recovery is sticking it out just long enough where the positives start to outweigh the negatives, right? So I got to a place where my life got good, and on the 91st day I reevaluated and I looked better and I felt better and my relationships had improved. And like a good addict, I said, wow, if I feel this good at 90 days, I wonder how I'll feel at 6 months. And today, September 28th, 2022, my clean date is still June 19th, 1996. Wow. Something clicked. That's right. There was something that clicked, and it stemmed from a person who wanted nothing to do with recovery. Nothing.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And I know we just went off on a tangent. We tend to do that a lot on rhyme and reason. That's the reason part.
Yeah, we have some teeth in the court that I serve. Something, I guess you could compare it to what you went through in Marchman. So I serve in a criminal court where people are charged with felonies, and we've got some teeth when they are in our court under the court supervision, when they aren't compliant with their conditions when they're on release in the community, if they aren't coming home when they're supposed to, if they're not living where they're supposed to, if they're not going to their counseling sessions like they're supposed to, we can take them into custody as a last resort. So there is some teeth in our treatment court to make sure that they stay in compliance with the conditions that we set.
I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that keeps somebody sober long-term is perseverance and consistency.
Yeah.
It's very easy to stay sober when life is good. It's very easy to stay sober when you want to stay sober. It is not easy to stay sober when you don't want to be sober. And the concept of maintaining a long-term recovery, right, is getting through those times where you literally don't want to do something, but you do it anyways. It's like going to the gym. Okay, I was with a trainer this morning, and the first time I went to the trainer, I never wanted to go back. Now I look forward to it.
I was going to say you're looking swole.
I mean, I'm honestly at 47 years old, I'm in some of the best shape of my life, all because of perseverance. Yeah. It's just because, and accountability. It's accountability. People ask me, you've been working out for 20 plus years of your life. Why do you need a trainer? I need to be accountable. Okay. Because when I went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning last night,
right,
if I didn't have a training appointment this morning, I would not have been in the gym. So anyways, talk about, do you have any success stories that might stick out in your head? Anything you'd want to talk about, like any particular case that kind of, I don't want to say changed you as a person, but just, when someone says like, what have been some of your highlights of doing this for as many years that you have? Is there any particular case that sticks out?
I've got highlights almost every week. So this week I'm on the phone. Much of my job, I'm at my desk, case managing from the bench. I've got my cell phone in one ear and my landline in the other, looking for treatment services for folks. And there's this very hard to place gentleman who's in front of me. His sister's telling me about all of his issues. She's his guardian. He's homeless. He's living in Hollywood at a bus station. He needs a place to stay. And I call a place that we often rely upon in our court called Project SOAR. And I call Project SOAR and I get this guy on the phone and he says, Judge, you're not going to remember me, but my name is Eddie. And 3 years ago, I was in your court and I had, I broke into some cars, and instead of sending me to prison because I was scoring prison on the sentencing guidelines, you showed me grace and you gave me treatment, and I'm here now and I'm helping Mike run the place. And I was on the bench and my eyes were welling up.
You were cafelling?
I was cafelling, and he just made me feel So good. I mean, I get a lot of purpose from this job anyway. It gives me a tremendous amount of purpose helping people every day be their best self. It gives me a great deal of joy. But when Eddie told me that, it just made everything right. So that was
Hi.
just this 1 week. There are instances like that I have the occasion to experience almost every week.
I love that. I mean, I love that stuff. I have
I do
a
too. I do too.
I have a guy in my life, and I'm going to break his anonymity. His name is Aaron Bukasi. And I don't know if you remember that name, but about 7.5 years ago, I had the pleasure of. I've actually known Aaron since he was about 3 years old. It's my dad's best friend's son. And it hit me like a ton of bricks the other night. I had a previous treatment center that we discussed prior to coming on live, and he was in a bad way, and I had put him in my treatment center. He had AMA'd and went on this horrific run with a female, and they did breaking and entering, robberies, all this stuff, and he wound up getting charged with, like, I want to say 20 something felonies. Okay. The girl, went away. She is still in prison 7.5 years later. Okay. She went away. She had struck out. I think she had previous. He did not. He was just an addict. And I don't know if he went in front of you or what judge he went in front of. They gave him 2 years house arrest, 10 years probation, community service, a whole bunch of stuff. The ankle monitor. On Friday night, I took my dad to a soccer game at Hard Rock Stadium. Argentina was playing, and Aaron's father, his name's Sergio, my dad's good friend, was also there. They're from Argentina too. And I ran into Aaron, hadn't seen him in a while. Aaron now has been clean 7.5 years. Aaron had opened a treatment center. Aaron now has a business that details cars and does this ceramic coating on cars, which is like this special thing. You never have to wax your car again. And so I told him I wanted to get my car done. The next night, Saturday night, his business partner dropped him at my place. I handed him the keys to my car. He took my car, took it to his shop in Fort Lauderdale, did what he had to do, and at midnight, dropped my car back off at my house. And now, why do I tell this story? I completely forgot that he should still be in prison for robbery, okay, and breaking and entering, and all the people change. He is a father now that has a 2-year-old. He is an upstanding member of the community, and I entrusted him with my brand new car. Here, go ahead, take it. Now, I have a little app that, shows exactly where your car is at. So that's the first time I got to use that because I've never given my car away before. But people change.
Yeah.
People change, and he's doing the right thing. And he was given that shot to get better. I don't think he'd be where he is today had he got sent to prison. I really don't. So I guess you got to weigh the benefits. Let me ask you, what mental health conditions have the highest rates of arrest and incarceration in your experience?
I think that we see a lot of schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder in our division. And when they present with comorbidity, when they're also using substances, that's when they seem to get in the most trouble.
Got it. Okay. That's what I kind of figured. Any type of, people who experience psychotic episodes. One of the things that we've been seeing a lot in treatment is trying to interpret if somebody is truly psychotic or, because there's drug-induced psychosis now, right? With this crystal meth and any of these stimulants, you come across some drug. And I remember we went through a phase many years ago with the bath salts and the eating of people's faces. That was some pretty intense stuff. Flocka. Was it the Flocka? Is that still around?
We see it, not as much, but we see it.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of died, I think. All right. What are or what would you consider to be some barriers to treatment?
Resources are always an issue. I have people in custody waiting on beds for too long and taking up jail space, and that's costly to the taxpayers. It's like $120 a day, I think.
Hmm.
And when I send somebody to the state hospital, I think that's $100,000 a year. I've heard that figure when I have somebody in a forensic hospital for the year. So the figures to the taxpayers in Florida are staggering when I have somebody in the jail or in the forensic hospital. The level of care, it's very costly to the taxpayers while we're waiting for less expensive care in the community. There just aren't enough residential providers to provide that kind of care, and there are long wait lists for the kinds of beds that I need. Very often, I'll be able to release somebody if they have supportive family. If the charges aren't too severe, I can consider releasing them on an ankle monitor. I can set a curfew or not let them leave their home except for treatment services. I can have a provider like Henderson or Archways, who we rely on a lot in Broward, provide day treatment services. Some of the providers in Broward even pick the people up at their home. They provide that transportation to and from the day treatment. But I would say the biggest obstacle that I face every day is a lack of resources.
I'm going to give a shameless plug to two different to two different programs. One
Sure.
being, of course, Recovery Unplugged.
Yeah.
We're now in network with pretty much everything under the sun, including Florida Blue. And one of the things that we've recently started about 6 months ago is we have a really solid virtual intensive outpatient program. And as part of our virtual services, our in-person programs are substance use disorder only. Okay. But our virtual IOP, we're not only offering primary substance use disorder, but we are offering primary mental health. So somebody who does not have a substance use issue that might be struggling with anxiety, depression, mood disorders, personality disorders, and it can be done from the comfort of their home or a halfway house. So we would obviously love to be a resource for you. And then there's another program I work with, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, but Aware Recovery. And Aware is also for Florida Blue providers, but Florida Blue, but it's the whole wraparound. They come to your house, they follow you for a year. So we're very fond of Aware Recovery as well. My dear friend Rachel McKeehan is one of the big wigs over there, someone I refer to pretty often, and vice versa. But they have that in-home support, and it can run concurrently with somebody who's actually in a treatment program. So they don't have to be out of a PHP program, or they can be in an IOP program and still work with Aware. So they do the whole come and pick them up, take them to meetings, and the cost is like $5 for people who have Florida Blue. So,
Dr. Barry, one of your listeners, Miss Mary, suggests that the cost of jail per day in her state of Minnesota is $700 a day. That's
it is crazy. And then Sibby said Dallas County has this problem too. I think what we're really seeing is this is not a Broward County problem. This is not a Florida problem.
right.
This is a United States of America problem.
True.
And we had last year and the year before record-breaking people who are dying from overdose. Right, it went from 52,000 a year to over 100,000 people a year. That's the equivalent of a JetBlue plane, 2 JetBlue planes going down every single day of the year in the U.S. And it's amazing to me that there aren't more funds allocated, that this isn't a bigger issue. I remember years ago, there was a mosquito-borne illness called Zika. Do you remember that?
Sure.
Did you know anybody who got Zika?
No.
No, me either. I think there was like 2 people in the whole U.S. that got infected, but we put billions of dollars into Zika prevention and so it just baffles me because I think that people look at mental illness and substance abuse as a choice.
Yeah.
I think that people, the lay person sees a drug addict and says, well, they chose to do that. That's on them, which, we know not to be the case. Speaking of stigma and community perception, how do you think it's influencing legal policy?
I think that our legislators are more apt to talk about it now, and the public is more apt to vote for legislators that are in tune with it. I can tell you that recently in a South Broward House district contested primary, a mental health advocate named Hillary Cassell won a hotly contested primary. Ms. Cassell, who is an attorney and a mental health advocate and often openly talks about her struggles with mental health issues, is going to hit the ground running, assuming she wins her general election in November. She will be a force to be reckoned with in Tallahassee on mental health issues. So I think that the public is more in tune with the issue and wants to see legislators address it.
Gotcha. We need more people like her, and we need more judges like you, right? If we could just clone you and put you in every courtroom in America, we'd have a lot more people getting help. Speaking of other your honors,
okay,
what can judges do in particular to turn the tide, right? I mean, what can you guys do as leaders? I mean, do you have like a secret judge society where you guys meet together? What does that look like?
We have regular meetings. We're all involved in different organizations. There's a lot of voluntary bar associations. My colleagues are all supportive of mental health awareness. We recognize Mental Health Awareness Day, Mental Health Month. We have a group that participates in the NAMI walk. But I would just say, as a society, we need to watch how we speak to one another. We have to eliminate words like, just in casual speak, we have to make sure that we're not using psycho or bipolar in our casual speak. People actually still say, you're so crazy or you're acting so bipolar. We have to eliminate that from our everyday speak.
What do you suggest?
Just to be more cautious and take other people's feelings into consideration, and to eliminate those words in particular from your vocabulary, because when you use those words, it's hurtful to people that are suffering from those illnesses.
I agree. I'm trying to think of replacements when you're in the heat of battle with a person and you want to tell them they're effing crazy, right? Like, what do you say? Like, you're acting a little off kilter. I'm gonna say this in the politest ways, and I'm not calling you crazy, but you're
right.
crazy. Okay, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in a fight in your house if you get in fights with your wife, to hear, I don't appreciate those words you just used on me. You're really hurting my feelings.
I'm not particularly confrontational, especially when it comes to my wife, who is Russian and a little bit short, not in stature, but with me. So I just usually don't.
You just cower in the corner.
Yeah, I don't get in fights with her because I'll lose.
That's funny. I hate conflict. But judging from what you just said, you're probably not a fan of conflict either, which is, in my opinion, very strange that you're a judge, right? Because
I like to work out conflict.
you like to resolve conflict.
Yes. I like
Okay.
to resolve conflict.
Can you share with us in your long career one of the wildest moments maybe that have occurred in your courtroom where, like, if you had a video camera, it by far would have gone viral? Listen, I'm throwing you off here because I'm asking very random questions.
I will. And this is recorded, and I don't know if I want this to be recorded, but I'll share it with you. Okay, so
don't bring up any names.
Okay, I often have competency hearings in my courtroom where we take testimony from doctors like you that give the court opinions on whether a person is competent or incompetent to proceed at trial. Uh-huh. And on one occasion where a guy was clearly competent and the doctors were suggesting he was malingering or feigning or faking that he was incompetent because he didn't want to go back to the regular trial courtroom to face his very serious charges. He was in the jury box where we keep the in custodies. He was chained at his wrists and ankles, and he was kind of like scurrying around in his seat and kind of squatted down and then sat back up. And there was a female pregnant doctor on the stand from the forensic hospital, and he squatted down again and got back up. And then all of a sudden, he kind of like threw something at the doctor on the stand. And then
what was it?
And then he took something else that he had gotten when he squatted down. And he drew on the back of his chair what one of the doctors in the jail refers to as a fecal Picasso. Fecal Picasso.
Fecal Picasso.
Yeah. And now this is in podcast history, and I'm not going to be able to take it back.
Did any of it hit you?
No, but we did have to call maintenance and have the courtroom cleaned.
Talk about a really shitty day.
I did find him competent to proceed, and I transferred him back to the regular trial courtroom to pursue his legal defenses.
So let me tell you, when I was in grad school, we had to do practicums. So we would get assigned to certain sites for 2 months at a time where we would do our practicums. And one of the sites I got assigned to was called SFETC, which was the South Florida Evaluation and Treatment Center in Miami. It was in Alapata. And I was running groups and this was basically a facility that housed people who were NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. I know you know the terms. I'm saying it for the listeners, or people who were looked at as not competent to stand trial. And my groups consisted of people just drooling on themselves, because they were so heavily medicated. And I thought, well, I'm training to be a psychologist, and this is great and all, but I'm not really experiencing true mental health because they're so heavily medicated. Well, for 3.5 years, I took a job at a maximum security prison in Miami called Everglades Correctional Institution. And at Everglades, I was a psych specialist, and this was a job, not a practicum. And I was assigned to inmates who were in what was called close management. So it was the prison within the prison. And what I learned there was people who are truly psychotic, people who have schizophrenia, people who have schizoaffectiveness, they don't want medications. And you see psychosis in its rawest forms in a prison. I'm convinced of that. Okay. From fecal Picassos to throwing fecal Picassos to, masturbating, in full view on purpose. They call those gunners. There's gunners and snipers. The gunners do it in full view, and the snipers try to hide. But you really see mental health in its rawest form in prison. So I have a feeling I could imagine what it would have been like to be sitting in your shoes that day with the pregnant female who was on the stand dodging poop. So, you know what, Judge Ari, this has been in my opinion, a really awesome episode. You are one of the coolest cats that are down here. You are instrumental in so many people's lives. And you are also probably one of the most humble people I know, because you'll never say any of this stuff about yourself. Okay. So just know you're loved. People love you. People love the bow tie. Let's throw that bow tie off a little bit.
This one's got corgis on it, little dogs with sunglasses.
And what kind of dog do you have? Is there still a dog at your feet?
No, I have a Bernedoodle.
A Bernedoodle? Is that a doodle that went through a fire?
It's a Bernese Mountain Dog poodle mix.
Okay,
I like your explanation more.
So he still has all his hair. He didn't get caught in a fire and become the Bernedoodle.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Well, I just want to make sure you're taking good care of your pets as you do your clients that you have.
Yeah.
But really, it has been a pleasure to have you on here on the Rhyme and Reason podcast. An hour flies by, especially when you have a guy who talks as much as I do. But it is really awesome. I can tell you that I have a ton of colleagues who all love you, and just keep doing what you're doing. Because you are impacting a lot of lives. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.